All right. Last lesson we learned about Joseph and how Joseph was Jacob's very favorite son. And remember, Jacob gave Joseph a special coat with lots and lots of colors. And his brothers were so jealous that they decided to do some evil toward him. And rather than kill him, though, they sold him as a slave. Poor Joseph. And of course, his father was so sad because he thought Joseph was dead. But he wasn't. And can you imagine how frightened Joseph must have been as he was carried off to a strange land with those people? Do you think he cried and whined and got depressed and said, "Oh, woe is me"? No, he didn't. You know what he did? He prayed and he asked God to be with him. And he decided that he was going to do the best he could and that he knew God would be with him. So when he got to Egypt, God was with him. And he didn't have a terrible place to live. He actually got to live in a beautiful palace. And a man named Potiphar bought him as his slave and made Joseph work in this beautiful palace. And so here, a few days before that, he was in with his family, but he wasn't in a beautiful palace like that. But now as a slave, he needs to make the best of what God has put him in. And so he did that. And he was a hard worker. And he did everything that Potiphar told him to do. And he did it well. He did everything to the very best of his ability. And Potiphar noticed what a good job he did. So little by little, Potiphar gave Joseph more and more responsibility to where he was in charge of his whole house. Isn't that amazing? And he was a wonderful servant. He helped Potiphar a lot, and Potiphar blessed him for that. No matter what we do, we need to do our very best. And Joseph was a great example of that. Well, Potiphar's wife also noticed what a good job Joseph was doing and what a handsome man he was. And she really liked Joseph a lot. In fact, though, she liked him so much, she asked Joseph to do something that was not a good thing for him and that she knew her husband would be upset about. But Joseph refused to do something that was not right. And because he refused Potiphar's wife to do what she wanted him to do, she was angry. She got so angry that she lied about Joseph. And she told her husband that Joseph did a terrible thing. And it wasn't true. But Potiphar believed his wife. And he threw him into prison. So he had to leave the palace and go to prison. Do you think he cried? Do you think he was upset? Do you think he got really depressed? Because not only is he's not in a beautiful palace, he's in a different country. He doesn't have a beautiful place to live, but he's in prison. Oh my goodness, that would be terrible, wouldn't it? But you know what? Just like he did in Potiphar's house, he decided to make the best of what God put him in. God allowed him to go into this prison for some reason. He didn't quite know what the reason was, but he was going to trust God. And as a prisoner, he decided to do his very best. So he didn't fight the prison guards. He didn't argue with them. He didn't mope around. He worked hard. Whatever they asked him to do, he did it as to the Lord. And so he became one of the very best prisoners, so that the prison guards even gave him special privileges and more responsibility, and they trusted him more. And the other prisoners also began to notice him and would even talk to him. And he was kind to the other prisoners, and he would be helpful to them. Well, one day, there were these two prisoners that arrived into the prison, and I'm missing a man. One of the prisoners had a dream. And in his dream, he was the chief butler. And he had this weird dream. And in the morning, he was very upset because he couldn't figure out what his dream meant. And so Joseph said, sometimes the Lord has given me dreams. If you want to tell me what your dream is, maybe I can help you know what it means. So the chief butler said, "In my dream, I I saw that there was a grapevine in front of me, and it had 3 branches, and it was full of lovely clusters of grapes. And then Pharaoh's cup was in my hand, and I took those grapes and I squeezed them into the Pharaoh's cup, and I gave it to him. What a strange dream. What did that mean? Well, this is what it means, he said. The 3 branches mean 3 days. And 3 days from now, Pharaoh is going to release you from prison. And then you will once again serve the king. Well, that was interesting. Boy, that was exciting. Well, there was the baker. The chief baker then said, oh, well, I had a dream too. I had a really weird dream. And so Joseph said, well, tell me about your dream. And I'm sure the baker thought, oh, it's probably going to be good news for me too. And the chief baker said, in my dream, there were 3 baskets full of bread. And there were cakes and things that I baked for Pharaoh. And then these birds came, and they started eating the food in my baskets. And they took it all away, and they just pecked at it and ate the bread. And they were flying down, and they were kind of attacking the basket. And then he said, what does my dream mean? And sadly, Joseph had to say, the 3 baskets mean 3 days. And in 3 days, you are going to be put to death. That's what that dream meant. And sure enough, everything happened just as he had said. Well, 3 days later, Joseph asked the servant, the chief, let's see, what was his name? He was a chief butler. He asked the chief butler to please remember him when he was released. So the butler left, was released to go back to the Pharaoh and work in his palace. And Joseph said, please let him know that I'm in this prison and I don't deserve to be, and that I was the one that told your dream. So 3 days later, the Pharaoh had a party. And at that party, he told his officials that he wanted the butler and the baker to be brought from prison. And sure enough, then he restored the butler to his job, and he put the baker to death, and he was hung. Well, do you think that the butler remembered to tell Pharaoh about Joseph? He totally forgot about it. He didn't tell him anything about his dream or about Joseph. And he was not set free right away. He had to wait in that prison for 2 more years. Do you think God forgot about Joseph and made him stay there for 2 years? No, God didn't forget about him. God was with him. He was with him that whole time. And there was a reason. We're going to find out the reason. That there's a reason that Joseph wasn't released yet. But he was patient. He knew God had a plan for him. And he needed to do his best where he was. No matter what the circumstances, Joseph would do his very best and stay close to God and ask him for strength and wisdom. And that's what he did. So for 2 more years, he's waited. And we're going to find out next story what happened after 2 years of being in prison.